And there is a bit of delay between when you speak and when these guys see. So I will be actually checking my comments. You know the drill,
Yeah.
right?
We've all played softball before.
All right. Okay, I think we are live right now, and I can see there are people. Hello, everybody. If one of you can please comment and let me know if the audio is coming through fine, then we can go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna give a few seconds. This is the portion that's likely gonna be chopped once the final, recording is done. So can somebody please comment? Hey, you know what I'm gonna do here? All right. Yes, I got some yes. Ray Collins, yes. Michael Huntington, yep. Audio is great. All right, cool. Thank you, guys. We are now ready to go live. My friend Charles Mendelson is back. He talked about B2B challenges with B2B marketing analytics in previous session, which was in January. So he's back with his story. His is an incredible story of becoming an analyst. And he started late in his career in becoming analyst. So he wants to share his story, which we thought will be great for many of you listeners here. Hi, Mayank. So he offered to share his wisdom, his path, his journey. So without much delay, I'm going to invite him and let him talk about himself. But before I do that, one more second is make sure you are subscribed to Optizent Academy's channel, this channel. So hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can get notified every time we go live. This session happens we have a different topic every week on Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Pretty much every week. Last week I skipped, but it's pretty much every week. So you can expect about 40 sessions in this year. And we've already done about 3, 4 this year. And many more great sessions are coming. And also make sure to check out our courses on Optizent Academy that can help you become a great analyst. Not to take anything away from Charles, he's done many other courses which he will talk about as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Charles. Charles, welcome to the show again. I call it show. Yes.
It's a show. I mean,
It's
we're broadcast, we're live, we're
Yes.
being distributed across the world. I think we get to call this a show.
All right. We'll call it a show.
Just because
All
it's
right.
being filmed in my basement doesn't mean it's not a show.
Hey, your basement looks great. Better than my office.
I try. This corner of my basement looks great.
Yeah. Oh, this is one corner, particularly for the show.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
we'll have you in the show again and again, pretty much. Lots of time. You have a lot of wisdom to share. You write towards data science, which is great resource. So I will be posting a link in the description of this video so you can read Charles' article. But now, Charles, over to you.
Hey, Anil. So just a quick introduction for the people who haven't seen me before. I am Charles Mendelson. I am a marketing data analyst at a enterprise fintech company called PitchBook, which is itself a wholly owned subsidiary of Morningstar, which is another fintech company. Morningstar, writ large, provides information on financial markets primarily to institutional investors, but it also does things like rates funds. For example, if you have a 401k in the United States, Morningstar has rankings for 401k plans to help benefit managers choose good 401k plans for the employees. PitchBook is a subsidiary of that, and the primary business model of PitchBook is we sell information about private markets, primarily venture capital and private equity markets, but there are some other subsections of that as well. So we are one of the primary information sources about what's going on in the world of venture capital and private equity. And I am a marketing analyst there, and my job is to tell our sales and marketing teams how well they're doing and how they can do better. And it's of the now 4 jobs I've had in analytics, it's far and away the best one. And it is fantastic. It's genuinely an A-tier firm. And I wanted to share with how I went from, fairly humble beginnings in analytics to getting to an A-tier firm, because I think there are some lessons that are generalizable. And I hope it's not just like me liking to watch myself speak on camera for an hour. So, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to answer me or ask me, I should say. I'm not going to ask you to answer the questions. I suppose that's my job. But yeah, so I guess we'll start off. Have any questions come in yet?
No questions yet. Guys, feel free to put your questions here. I will stop, Charles. So make it a conversational session rather than one-way session. It's not a webinar like I keep saying in all my sessions. It's not one way. It's your chance to ask questions, interact with Charles, clarify anything that you have in your mind. So make sure to put your questions. No question is stupid question, because everybody has to start somewhere. Everybody gets stuck, and we are all learning. So and I'll read the questions as they come.
Great. So for my deep background, and I have a slideshow, I just don't think it's very interesting. So I think it's better if I just talk. So notes for me to reference off screen. So as deep background, I was running my own business, which as Anil knows, there are many sides to running a business. Some of them are more rewarding than others. And I found that many of the parts of running my own business were not what I loved. And so I was very interested in transitioning into another career. And to that end, I started getting a user experience design certificate from Bellevue College, which is a small community college in the greater Seattle area. And so, because I originally was like, oh, I'm going to be a user experience designer. That's going to be fantastic. And then I started studying user experience design. And it turns out, and this is certainly for some people, but it wasn't for me, the bulk of user experience design is building websites for people or optimizing websites for people. And it wasn't something I was hugely interested in. And we were doing these HTML, CSS courses. There was a whole series of them. I'd overheard the program director mention that, maybe the 3rd level class, they would be open to substituting some other classes for. And when I heard that, I was like, so you mentioned that you might be open to substituting a class for this program. He said, yeah, I mean, we've got this new digital marketing analytics program. If you want to do that, I'll happily give you credit for it. So, and that is how I met Anil. He was teaching a digital marketing analytics class for Bellevue College, which is, my understanding, is substantively very similar to what he teaches at OptiZent. And I loved it. It was the best class I took. It was the most interesting subject. And like, I think it was Saturday mornings. And, I was in my early 30s, and the idea of being excited about getting up for class on a Saturday morning after working all week was a little weird. But I was genuinely excited to go there. I'm still in touch with a couple of people from that class. And it was great. So I think towards the end of the class, Anil said the most helpful thing that a teacher ever said to me. Because I sort of said, hey, yeah, so I really like this. I think I actually want to be an analyst. I don't want to be a user experience designer. What else do I need to do to get a job in this? And Anil just said to me, well, just start applying for jobs. Like, you don't need to know anything else. You're good enough at this. Someone will hire you. And the line throughout the rest of the program was like, oh, this gives you a foundation, but you have to build a portfolio. Oh, this gives you a foundation, but you really are going to need to do some volunteer projects first. And Anil was just like, start applying for jobs. So I did. I think that was in August of 2018, August 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was 18.
I think it was 2018. Yeah. The last couple of years have been a blur, in a good way. And I think my first job started the first week of November 2018. So, and I think there's a lot to understand about getting your first analytics job, which is very different than getting subsequent analytics jobs. So my first analytics job was at a company called Source Technology. It was an early stage startup that was a cannabis technology company, which was actually turned out to be quite good for me because there are all kinds of restrictions if you work for a cannabis company, just because of the way laws work in the United States, that it's legal in a state, but it's not federally legal. So it changes how you're paid. It changes certain future potential job opportunities because it's in a legal gray area. I did not work for a cannabis company. I worked for a technology firm that serviced the cannabis industry. So it was one of those little technical distinctions that let me have a very, very legitimate line of employment. And because it's an emerging line of employment, people have actually been interested in talking to me about my time in the cannabis sector at other jobs. It wasn't like, oh, we're hiring a drug dealer. It was like, oh, this guy was working in a really interesting startup space. So my title was business.
Hey, that's a different spin on drug dealers. You said it. Technology-driven drug dealers.
Well, in all fairness, we also weren't the dealers. We sold technology to help produce product. It was a little different. So
maybe I will have to edit out this section. Maybe YouTube might flag it.
No. I think we'll be okay.
All right.
Maybe YouTube is more puritanical than most of my subsequent employers. Anyway, so my title was business analyst, and business analyst positions are a fantastic position to apply for your first analytics job, because nobody really knows what a business analyst is supposed to do. It's a super vague description, super vague job title that basically says your job is to sort of be good with numbers when no one else is really good with numbers. So I supported the marketing team, but I basically supported every department in the company, and I had a really, really varied range of experiences. So a lot of it involved communicating technical information to non-technical stakeholders. So I actually created all of the publicly facing reports while I was there on the outcome of our scientific experiments, which, and this is definitely on my resume, which directly led to closing of sales worth more than my salary. So when I was originally hired there, I was brought on as contract for hire. And I also recommend contract for hire as good for first positions. Don't get weirded out by that. The pay was
that is how I started. That was my first position, contract to hire. I didn't end up taking that job though. I got another job because I had other jobs lined up after that.
The pay was initially my hourly pay was very low. It was definitely a step back in income. And after my contract period, they promptly doubled my pay. Which was great.
Cool.
I will say that if I could do that every 6 months for the rest of my life, I'd be very happy. But as it turns out, but that was great. And so the primary skills I used there were Excel, PowerPoint, general marketing skills, communication. For some of the deeper statistical analysis, I used SPSS. Which I wouldn't recommend. It was just, I knew how to use it and I had a free license for it. I would recommend doing most statistical analysis in something like R or Python that's open source.
So how much statistical analysis experience did you have before you took that job?
The sum total of my statistical analysis experience was I took an intermediate stats class as part of a psychology master's I'm currently getting.
So that was before you got the first job?
This was before I got the job.
Okay.
And
how much, when you looked at the job, whatever they were asking, how close did you feel like you got all the skills, or you're close or you're far away from?
They were so basic. They wanted very basic Excel skills. That was the extent of what they wanted. I got very lucky with that job. I would also say I probably applied to about 150 jobs. I got about 3 phone interviews before this, but this was sort of the first process I really went through.
Cool.
They gave me a project too. I love for junior roles, jobs that give you a project to do are your chance to really show them how good you are.
Yep. That's great. Yeah. And one of the things I'm going to say is the difference between the course you took and there was a practical experience as well there. But one of the things I do with Optizen now is they work on real site, which you guys did work too on the real site, analyze it. So go through each step of that process, which is actually adding to your experience, those who are interested in learning about this.
So,
And
and
I think getting experience is, yes, you know the theory, but getting experience, whether in your first job as a contract hire or whether it's an internship, whatever you're doing, just try to learn as much as you can and then put that on your resume because that's what's going to count.
And dovetailing on that, the biggest difference between me interviewing after my first job and before my first job was the quality of stories I could tell.
Yep.
Even if your first job isn't very good, the fact that you will accrue stories, like it just helps so much when you're actually advocating for yourself in the hiring process. It goes on your resume, it goes in your cover letter, it goes throughout the interview process. They'll know you're relatively junior, so they'll be really excited that you're actually solving real world problems, that you have dealt with things. And it's even small things like in my next job, I was asked, because it was more communication heavy, how would you communicate something of importance to the rest of the company? And my joke was, I'd say, well, the first thing I would do is I would send out a company-wide email that no one will read. Which made everyone laugh because it also indicated like, oh, he's done this before.
Yeah.
He knows the process. And then you say, and then what you do after you send out that company-wide email is you have to go and talk to sort of the departmental leads and the departmental heads to make sure they have the information and they can disseminate it. You have to send the company-wide email, but you also have to know that no one is actually going to read it.
Yep.
So
that's true.
And so Source was a great place to work. I'm still friends with a bunch of people I was friends there, but startup life is chaotic and very unstructured. But I got some of the coolest projects of my career were done there. I had to do an analysis of the Canadian cannabis market for a client we had up there, which is, I think I still have that, and it's one of those. I will probably one day do a better write-up for it and figure out a way if I can get that to be a little more publicly facing, because it was genuinely one of the coolest projects I've had to do. I did another one where I did a retail survey project where I just went to, I want to say 50 cannabis shops around Seattle to see how our customers' products were displayed, what competing customers there were, and then if I identified products that we didn't know, I was supposed to buy them and then bring them back to the lab so that we could analyze them to see what was going on with them. That was where we found out that a rival product lost 90% of its potency because of their bottling decision. There's all kinds of cool stuff that happens when you work in actually like an actual retail process that involves making things and distributing them, and it lets you ask questions and answer questions that you just never would think about. And I think even if you're primarily interested in being in a digital space, working in a physical space, the questions are so much more tangible. They really drive home a lot of what you're doing. So I will tell you that 90% loss of product efficacy definitely made it into marketing materials and technical write-ups that I was producing. So have we had any?
Yep.
Anything from the audience?
Any questions from the audience? No, they're actively listening. There are a lot of people actively listening. I can see that real-time feed, but no questions.
Great. So, and the other thing that it taught me about a lot of analytics work that I think also gets lost when it's digital, it's really, really, really useful to actually go out into the field and talk to people. And going out into the field doesn't necessarily mean going to a retailer. Going out into the field might actually mean walking across the office and talking to the database engineer, or, more likely right now, slacking the database engineer and getting into a detailed conversation with them, scheduling a meeting with them. But actually going out and talking to people really changes how you approach problems. Give me 1 second. So, so that was a fantastic first experience. And I really, really advocate, there's actually a methodology, get out of the office. It's from user experience design. You will learn a lot less if you only talk to the people you sit next to, even if it's just go across the office.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So true. Yeah, you're logged into the people that are surrounded or are near you are thinking in the same way. So you're not learning a whole lot. You're just echoing each other's point of view. So get out, talk to others in the organization, people maybe who are using your data or who might be impacting something in the business. Go talk to them, learn from them.
Yep. And it even comes up now. So PitchBook has, we call them subject matter expert analysts, where their job is to know a very deep part of an area. Like, so I'm friends with our sort of food tech and ag tech expert. And so we periodically talk, and, they get kind of competitive. So I help him with his subject lines for his emails and do other things that, marketing analysts are good at. And we've been talking a lot, and sort of one of the things that I asked him, and he just never thought to do it. He's now started incorporating it into his work. So for agricultural technology, there are sort of the primary customers are farmers, or that's one of the big customer groups. And so there are all of these tech companies that are trying to solve problems. And he has now incorporated into his workflow, actually talking to farmers who are going to be the consumers of these solutions, to sort of help him figure out, like, oh, is this actually a problem that people want solved? And that's actually a really helpful level of analytics to figure out, is actually just talk to your end users.
Yeah. So I've got a comment here from Renee. I agree, siloed environments are the worst. So agreement there. Yep.
And silos happen formally, and then there's also informal silos.
Informal silos, yes.
It's stunning how much you can break down formal silos just through informal work, just by getting to know people who work in a similar role. At another company I worked at, Porch, I was the analyst that didn't sit on the central analytics team. And they had a lot of resources that I needed, but formally we were divided from each other. I was also in a part of the business that didn't have a lot of database support at the time. And I sat with them twice a week. I just moved my desk to sit at a vacant desk over by them, so that I was at least informally part of the team. I participated in their stand-up meetings so that I would know what they were doing and they would know what I was doing. None of this was on the org chart. All of this was just done by specifically building relationships across teams. And that's having good relationships is just stunning how many problems that will solve for you.
Yeah. Cool. I have another question here, and that might actually be, when you're talking to others and you're trying to make your work known, plus also helping others. I think that's one is critical, which I think Taylor Lynn is asking. I'm an aspiring analyst who just started a new job that is 50-50 digital marketing and analytics role. What advice would you give to me as I build towards becoming an analyst? So I think before you start, I would say what you were just mentioning. Hey, you are already in an organization. You go talk to other people, figure out how you can help with the data, because you have a sort of a role and responsibility to analytics. And that'll help you figure out what people want and how you can help them build relationship. And that'll send you towards an analyst. That was my actually story on how I became an analyst. I was doing data warehouse development and leading that with the website development side of things. And I was intrigued by the data because it was databases, and every time it was data. And I started talking to people where my boss noticed, and they said, hey, you're good at it. Would you like to take over this and do this? And that's how I ended up doing it. So you are in a job, good position. Now I'll let Charles talk.
Yeah, so one of the things that I will say is a general observation about marketing people is marketing people tend to be scared of analytics. And that is a huge asset for you. So if you're 50-50, just by having an interest and an acumen towards analytics, you can start to take over the analytics work from coworkers informally. And it's not really even take over, it's just help them with it. So if they're struggling with something and they know you're the point person in the department to go to with analytics questions, other people in your organization are also going to notice that. So that might, if there is a role for a full-time analyst, that might open up to you. If there's an analytics team, get to know them. Once again, a lot of this comes down to relationships and sort of angling your work. Now, you can't neglect the other half of your job, but generally speaking, people love people who are helpful, particularly helpful for the sides of things that they don't like doing or really struggle with. So one of the best ways of approaching any job is don't think of it as your job is to do something. Think of it as your job is to also make everyone else you work with better at what they do.
Yep, exactly.
And if you can do that, so if you just by virtue of being interested in analytics, become the person who just everyone wants to talk to about analytics with and makes them better at analytics. I mean, if I'm hiring a marketing analyst and they tell me that story, I'm going to really like them.
Yep. Yeah, initiative and your drive. I mentioned this in one of my other sessions. So when I hired, there are specific job that requires specific skill set. That's different story, right? When you're building a team that needs a lot of people, and I'm filling it with junior people, I do not look at what they know in terms of the technical skills, whether they know Excel or PowerPoint or Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, etc. I even hired people who did not know what cookies were, like no idea about internet. But what was there was their drive to learn and be helpful and take initiative. One of the analysts I hired, I asked him like, hey, if I give you a book, can you read that book and tell me what's in the book, or can you make sense of it? Yes, tell me what book. I'll read everything before I even come to the job. So that told me like this person is really motivated and really wants to do this job. And that was one of my best hires ever, and had no idea about, even like I asked him cookies. He goes, no, I don't know anything about internet or cookies. I've just browsed the site, but this is something I'm data driven. I like numbers and I can do these things. Like, okay, or we'll teach you the rest.
And continuing on that, even as you advance, so some things become non-negotiable. There's a certain baseline level of skills you have to have. Like you've got to know Excel, you've got to know SQL, Python or R is moving into that category. But even then, you don't need to be great at them. You sort of need to know enough to know what you don't know and what you can learn. Because the secret to analytics is it's continuous learning. Everyone emphasizes sort of skills like, oh, these are the skills that will get you to get a job. Skills don't get you a job. Attitude, mindset, and ability get you a job.
Yep.
If somebody, if I'm hiring an analyst and somebody has all of the skills and they have no social skills to speak of, it is like pulling teeth getting any information out of them, I'm not going to hire that person. If somebody comes to me and they're, hey, I know Excel, I know SQL, I've been meaning to learn Python, but I haven't gotten around to it yet, but they're great at communicating, they're great at talking, I am much more likely to just say, hey, they can be up to speed on Python in 2 months.
Yeah. Well, we have started. I mean, this is where I started 5-day challenges on Optisant Academy, specifically for those. You want to know basics of SQL, 5 days. I know you can learn. Rest is practice, right? You have to practice. 5-day, you can learn, you can get started with Python. 5-day, you can get started with Google Analytics. 5 days, you can get started with TagBench, whatever. Those tools, technologies, programming skills, you can get started and then you just build on those. But attitude, like you said, it's the drive, the attitude. I want to do this. I will do whatever it takes. I'm looking for interns in Optisant, and that's the same thing that I'm looking for in people. Do you have the drive? Are you dedicated enough? Can you follow through on your commitments? Not only just, hey, I can do this, but actually do the stuff to show you can do it. Rest, everything can be taught.
And when we evaluate projects for potential hires, we really secondarily care about their answers. We want to know the process behind getting their answers, because the truth is we have a lot of discretion in the answers we get. We can make conversions go up or down depending on the window that we use to look at the conversion.
Yep.
What matters is actually understanding the logic behind why they came up with those answers and whether they properly interrogated the data they're looking at. That's so much more important than sort of coming up with what we look at as our numerically right canonical answer. So like a good answer with a bad process isn't repeatable. A bad answer with a good process is improvable.
Yep.
So,
cool. Any other questions? Taylor, does this answer your question? There was a lot of answers behind your question, but hopefully
it was a great question.
Great question. Yeah. Cool. All right. No other questions as for now. So
moving on, my second job was at a cycling company. I was a business analyst in the IT department. IT is actually another great place to look for analyst opportunities. IT taught me a lot of great things. I was not there very long. Unfortunately, there was a private equity purchase and my whole department was laid off 3 months after I got there. But once again, working in IT, one, it's given me enough credibility that when I have to ask questions to IT, they always answer my questions really quickly because there's sort of a camaraderie of having been in the IT trenches. The second great thing I learned working in an IT department is our job is not to analyze numbers. Our job is to solve problems. That's basically everyone's job at the core is you're actually solving a business problem. Analysts solve problems related to numbers. What I learned in IT is that very often what the problem you're asked to solve is really only at best tangentially related to the actual problem the business is facing. And that if you ask really good questions about the actual nature of the problem, you come to much, much, much better solutions. So I spent a lot of time there doing process automation because somebody would come to me and they'd say, oh yeah, this report is wrong. And I'd actually sit down and talk with them for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And then I'd find out actually the report was fine. It's just they were then bringing it into an Excel spreadsheet to manipulate it a whole bunch because the thing they asked the IT department to send them every day wasn't actually sufficient. So rather than have them spend hours, manipulating a bad report that we were sending them, we could actually just answer the questions they wanted in the report they had, like in the report that we were sending them every day that was automatically created. So that's sort of the next thing is properly scoping problems, properly identify things. There was also some project management. I had to deal with a lot of vendors when I was there. My best advice to analysts is do not try to have someone else deal with vendors. That is my having had.
I remember you didn't you write something about that in your article or something about vendor management?
I'm actually a colleague and I are collaborating on a vendor.
Oh, okay, I remember seeing something.
I think
Maybe
there
it
was a
your
LinkedIn piece.
LinkedIn, yeah.
I wrote a LinkedIn post that was advocating a parallel position to customer success manager, which is vendor success manager, and their job was just to actually deal with vendors.
Cool. I have a question here, which I don't quite understand. Maybe Satya, you can elaborate. Must known basic models in marketing analytics for a data analyst.
This is probably machine learning. This is probably a machine learning question where he's asking what machine learning. This is what I'm taking it to mean. If we're wrong and we're answering the wrong question, as a marketing analyst, you don't need to know any machine learning models to get a job in analytics. Machine learning models are mostly a data science related thing. I work at a very like in-house, we're a very large marketing organization. We have, we're currently going through a hiring cycle, but we have 4 full-time analysts and we have about 60 people on our marketing team. Our company also has an in-house machine learning team for the product side. We farm out the machine learning for our marketing. We have a vendor that handles that. This is largely the vendor that my friend wants to write an article about. My colleague fortunately has to handle most of that vendor relationship. A lot of the machine learning work in marketing is actually how do I connect my data to the machine learning vendor and make sure that it doesn't break. So mostly.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Mostly it involves like actually just understanding APIs, how to connect a data pipeline, and then how to make sure the data pipeline doesn't break and is
Correct.
being processed in a time that's actionable.
Yeah, and I think the other stuff is, making sure the correct data is going, all the data pieces from wherever data needs to be collected. And you might spend a lot of time also on the data quality side of things to make sure it's the correct format,
Yeah.
correct data is there. But there are vendors that you will be using, or even it's like internal folks who are data scientists who are building these models. So as a marketing analyst, generally you won't need to know. I also interviewed somebody on this channel. It's a friend of mine who's CEO of Squark, which is a no-code machine learning platform for marketers. But the main thing there is, as a marketing analyst, your job is to make sure you're putting the right set of data, the data quality is there, it's clean data, and then whatever is coming out, you can make sense of that and apply it to the business. That's how your job is going to be.
Yeah,
So
and I do have friends who do machine learning, as part of their jobs, and they basically fall into two tiers. I have friends who have PhDs who do this. They have very, very interesting jobs that are dynamic and they get to solve interesting problems. And then I have friends who sort of more went the self-taught route or the boot camp route, and their jobs are much more figuring out which already solved, like which solution to implement. And that is personally not as interesting to me. So
yeah,
that's something that you should be thinking about if you're sort of if you want to go more a machine learning direction. I will say the people I know who are very, very, very good at machine learning, what separates them from everyone else is that they are outstanding with Python.
yeah.
They're basically software engineers who do a very specific side of software engineering. And so the principles of software engineering are something that you should be focusing on that will help you stand out from many other people sort of running towards the machine learning boom.
Yeah, and I think there are jobs that are coming up where these two roles are blending as well. So not to say there are purely marketing analyst roles where you won't be doing any Python, but there are jobs. Interviewed another lead recruiter from a global recruiting agency. You can check that out as well on the channel. And where we were discussing this, like he was seeing a lot of jobs now asking Python machine learning from marketing analysts and SQL. So SQL, Python, or R, and fundamentals of machine learning. So we have actually on Optizent Academy, also have digital data science program, which takes the digital marketing problems and how do you solve it or how do you create models and how do you solve it using Python and SQL, etc. So it's a 10-week program, which is very unique to just applying data science, machine learning to marketing, and which is also Satya's next question. Basically, I want to understand the kind of problems a marketing data analysts get. So, uh, he was talking about machine learning algorithms, but clarifying that, what kind of problems a marketing data analysts get?
So there's probably two big buckets. One is systems. How do we make the system do a thing that it's not currently doing? That is, so at my current job, my job is sort of a blend between software development and analytics. Like I sometimes actually do have to write original code to solve a specific pipeline problem. We also have
What language do you write the code in?
Primarily Python.
Python. Okay. Great.
We do this to solve usually specific problems, usually while we wait for the database engineers who work for business intelligence to build a more robust solution, but our stakeholders can't wait. So a good example of that was we did not have Google Analytics information in our Snowflake instance. So we had a series of solutions that if somebody wanted a specific page Google Analytics information for them, we would support that. We're almost at the end of the project to actually get all of that information into Snowflake now. And that was something that was spearheaded primarily by the data engineers. So instead of a development role in that, I was more of a project management role, making sure they were getting the right information and putting it in the right place and then auditing their work. The other types of problems we're asked to solve are reporting-based problems in some way. So some of it is we're building out a new report. Can you answer this question with the data? That is often something I do. And then I'm currently also leading a fairly complex A/B testing program for one of our marketing campaigns where we are trying to evaluate whether things get, how to make a program get better. So that's probably the biggest thrust. And I think that's what most marketing data analysts' jobs are to take what they currently do and get them better. And then I have a friend who, he's basically an analyst, but he is essentially a content marketer for his company where everyone that company hires is an analyst in some way. To be in their marketing department, you have to be an analyst. And basically his job is to just continually optimize the campaigns he runs. So that's actually a side of analytics that people don't usually think about, is that you can actually be a general campaign manager too.
Yeah, there are several applications depending on the organization, the group that you will be working within that company or organization. So, they come in all flavors. There is another video that I did on the career in analytics, and that's specifically around digital analytics, like what kind of careers you can have. There is also, which is the implementation side of things. You're just instrumenting things, which is more technical. Won't call them like a digital analyst, but it is specific to digital analytics, like implementing Google Tag Manager, Adobe, etc. And then there is like analyst, which could be a campaign analyst, as you are saying, making campaigns better. It could be an A/B testing or CRO analyst, trying to make conversion rate optimization better or running A/B tests. Reporting analyst, who's focused mainly on reporting. So there are several flavors. And some organizations, smaller organization, you might actually end up doing all of those pieces.
Every organization is slightly different. From my experience, which has mostly been at relatively small organizations, one of the big differences I've noticed primarily in interviewing analysts is analysts that come from big enterprise companies usually have a very deep skill set and have a very narrow lane that they're in the analytics department. If you're at a smaller firm or at a, you usually have to wear more hats or have a more diverse array of problems you solve. So, someone who is at a giant company might be really actually like responsible for one segment of one campaign. That's how large the budget is and how specific it is. But that campaign represents an annual spend of $100 million. So they want someone optimizing literally every length of that. The downside for me when I'm evaluating someone that comes from there is this person going to fit well in a more ambiguous environment?
Yep. Cool. Great point. I have another question from Satya here, or one general question. Would like to know the impact of marketing automation, if any, in your current marketing data analyst role.
So we have two marketing automation engineers that I work with closely. And some of my job is to do light work that they can't do. Any company at any reasonable sense of scale, if marketing automation is just how it is. It's sort of a separate track. You can definitely get from analyst to automation engineer. It just, a lot of the skill sets cross over. So for example, Python, which I primarily use for analytics, I will ask our marketing automation engineer for help with all the time because he knows way more about it than I do. And I'm sure that if that was a direction I wanted to go, I could make that happen. So, I mean, automation is just, how it goes. Most automation solutions are going to be somewhat bespoke because everyone has a slightly different tech stack, and off-the-shelf automation solutions don't get you all the way there. If you're super interested in marketing automation, learn Salesforce like the back of your hand.
Cool. Right. Any other questions? No. All right. No questions.
So let's see. I think I've talked enough about my career. I think I can talk a little bit about sort of what I've done to now, what I think I did wrong, and what I plan to do in the future. So hopefully people can skip that step. And then something I also want to bring up is sort of any type of analytics job exists on a spectrum. The spectrum is, on one side, there's project management, and on the other side, there's software development. And analysts kind of fall anywhere in between. And pretty regularly at every job I've had to do a little bit of both. And one way to think of your analytics career, some people, I guess there's sort of a triangle to it. I'm not super interested in machine learning myself. There's sort of you can also move more in the machine learning direction. But basically, you will need to have soft skills from project management and hard skills from software development. And how much you emphasize one versus the other will sort of influence the track of your career.
Yep.
So when I started out, like everyone, I emphasized a lot of my hard skills. I spent a lot of time learning Excel. I spent a lot of time learning SQL. I spent a lot of time learning Python. That's sort of the three-legged stool, I think, on which analytics currently rests. You could do R too. I don't know you have to be in a pretty insane work environment if they'll reject R, if they'll reject one or the other. Basically what we're looking for at this point is Excel, and I actually don't use Excel very much at this point. I primarily have replaced it with Python, but you still need to know it because people will give you Excel workbooks. You'll be asked to troubleshoot Excel problems. You then have SQL. SQL is just, any job except at the very smallest startups will call for SQL. You got to know how to do it. You got to be able to look into things. You got to know your joins, though a lot of SQL work is just getting to know a database. The longer you're at a place, the more valuable you are, just because you know where the obscure corner of the database that no one else does.
Correct. That's a great point, because understanding the data structure, databases is critical. Where is the data residing? What is each column about? And then, writing basic SQL scripts to get the data that you want.
Yep. But I mean, databases are essentially never actually designed. They're sort of this organic accretion of things together that at various points in the business, someone thought was a good idea to do it like that. And they don't necessarily all talk to each other. No one has a map. And if you're really, really, really lucky, your database engineers have a small corner of it that says, this part I know is good and I have maintained this. And everything else is completely suspect.
Well, that's also if everything ends up in a database. We worked on projects where things are sitting in Excel sheets, CSV files, databases, Access database, SQL databases. So
I have worked at a company and had to work with a data set that was a $20 billion business unit that was based out of Google Sheets.
Google Sheets, yes. But Google Sheets is now becoming very common, right? So we have another project that we actually are involved in where everything is in Google Sheets. Then you have like 50 different Google Sheets and you have to bring them together. So that's another skill set if you have. Like if you think about your job, as long as that interests you and you can do it really good, there is always a job for those things. If the tools exist, there is a job for it.
Making multiple data sources that are not keyed to each other talk to each other that was the largest part of several jobs I've had. It is very time consuming. And if you can tease answers out of it, people love you.
Yep. Well, I'm going to plug in the SQL challenge as well. So those who are interested in learning SQL, which is like, almost required for you to be successful in any company these days, there is a 5-day challenge that is going to be starting, I think, next week. Check out on Optizent Academy, and you can, in just 5 days, like whenever it starts in 5 days, you will know enough SQL, more SQL than many other analysts, marketing analysts know. So rest is practice.
Literally, there are part of my job is sometimes like there will be a marketing person who they've had a report, something very small goes wrong with it, and they don't know any SQL, and it's literally the smallest change you can make, and they look at you like you're a wizard.
Yep.
Because to quote someone, you know the robot speak. So someone said that to me once.
Cool. So I have a comment here. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you, but maybe you'll answer. Oh, just a comment from Renee. True about databases and data. We hope for good, clean data, but this rarely happens.
I think, so I write for a data science publication, and so I'm in that room. So I know a lot of data scientists. I'm not actually a data scientist, but it's estimated 80 to 90% of time on any data-based project, not database, but like any project where you're working with data, 80 to 90% of the time is spent on cleanup.
Yep. Cleanup is a huge part. I have recently come across many organizations, like new startups, which are entirely focused on data quality, data cleanup. We spend a lot of time making sure the data is clean, and if you don't have the right set of data, clean data, then you can't make any decisions based on that data. So that is the most critical aspect.
If someone in your organization is creating some way of getting data from anybody, and they are counting on critical data from a, open text entry field, you have my permission to hit them with a rolled up newspaper. If it's absolutely critical data, you have to emphasize to people, it's got to be a selection, radio button, checkbox, drop down.
Exactly.
You do not want to be parsing text. It's the most maddening thing you can possibly do. Also learn regex because it'll really come in handy.
That reminds me of one of my early days of project. This was about maybe 20 years ago. I remember that. And when the websites were first coming up, now when you go fill a form and you have the state field to fill in or countries, you have a drop down. Back then, one of the big organization, I can't name them, but they were basically letting people type in their state, city, and country. And we were getting all sorts of different results. People in Washington will write WA or WASH or full, Washington. And so and data cleanup was huge problem, or data quality was huge problem for them because now people are typing in different things.
Yeah.
However, also when you give drop down and when you're asking for values, make sure like, why do you need them? And is the person going to fill this in? First, most of the time people pick the first option that's available to them in a drop down. Most of the people in US live in Alabama. Do you know that? Why? Because that's what they select in the drop down. Alabama is the first state.
And if it's not a particularly long list, you can actually identify and control for that by randomizing, by recording the order of the list and then randomizing the order.
Well, for state and city, something you can even do IP detection or whatever to geolocation detection. But think about those. Whenever I'm filling something, I look at, okay, either what's the first option if I have to just get past that form, or if it's something that I want, and then I will pick based on who are they going to give this to. So I pick based on that. I mean, there are people who play with the system, and that's where data cleanup comes into play. You just can't rely on that data.
I worked on a sales project where we were identifying why people were canceling their orders.
Mm-hmm.
And the most common selection was soldier being deployed, because that was a selection that the call center people knew would never get flagged.
Yeah.
So, because some of the ones then required a follow-up response to make sure if they really wanted to cancel, but if they just put soldier being deployed, no one ever questioned it. So 80% of account cancellations were from that.
People just figure out, right? So
yeah,
there are ways to get around. Once you do enough of these forms and stuff, what's going to work, what's not going to work.
So
Go ahead.
Once, oh,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I had a comment here.
oh, go for the comment.
Okay. Guillermo is saying an advice for job seekers. In addition to developing the soft skills and mindset of an analyst, do you think it is a good idea to specialize in a certain industry to be more attractive to companies? As advice for job seekers, what's your advice on this?
Um,
Uh, Specialize
unless
in a certain industry or just go for these skills?
I think that's a later problem. You know, you really need to be getting into the senior level roles before analysts are really being asked for a lot of relevant industry experience. If you're going for a junior role, that's probably going to close more options than opens. I have worked now in essentially 5 industries, something like that. Some of there's always validity to being across that. But if I sort of said, oh, I'm only working in this niche, unless there are a lot of jobs that are around you and you know they're hiring, that can really close off a lot of options. And the principles of analytics really do generally apply. Maybe if you're gonna sort of categorize yourself in that way, maybe the broadest possible categories like B2B versus B2C, just because they're pretty different workflows. But even then, like someone has a lot of B2C analytics experience and they want to move B2B or vice versa, if they're good, I don't think most places be like, oh, this guy's only done B2B. Doesn't matter. He doesn't know anything relevant to what we do.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't close options for yourself like that. And actually that sort of brings me to the point I was about to make. Once you sort of have a good amount of skills on that tripod, which are, we'll call them spreadsheets, SQL, and Python, you can endlessly chase the next thing. Knowing a data visualization tool like Tableau is helpful. You can mostly learn that on a job, to be perfectly honest. Like you will not be denied an opportunity if you understand the principles of data visualization. You will not be denied an opportunity because you don't have deep Tableau experience or Power BI or whatever the other one is, or
Google Data Studio or Domo. Bunch of them.
Know one well enough to be able to sort of speak intelligently about presenting information. And so the biggest mindset that shifted for me is I am now focusing much more on fundamental skills as opposed to, tools. Tools, you need tools to do a job. Tools, knowing a tool, unless it's really, really specific, probably won't create as many opportunities for you as, for example, having a really good understanding of algorithms, which is currently what I'm working on, or having a really good understanding of how network traffic works. Those sorts of less shiny objects are so much more valuable. And if someone tells me, I'll ask an interview question, what have you been learning lately? Someone tells me, I've been learning this very specific Python library. I'm like, okay, that's good. If someone tells me that they've just read a math textbook on problem solving from the 1940s, which, I'm going to go, that guy. Because that guy is working at a much deeper, more fundamental level and isn't, because, when you chase the shiny thing, there's always another shiny thing, and it sort of leads to a very wide, shallow skill set. And I would prefer to hire someone with a bit of a deeper skill set if that depth is broadly applicable. So a good problem solving framework, having that is so much more valuable than really knowing the ins and outs of scikit-learn. Because someone with a really good problem solving framework can learn scikit-learn very quickly. Someone who knows scikit-learn and does not have a good problem solving framework is not going to be a very good analyst.
Cool. Yep. Good advice.
And as the shameless self-plug, I did recently publish an article on problem solving, and I believe it will be in the description for the YouTube video. So if you're interested.
Yes, it'll be. Cool. Yeah, that's a solid advice. You apply it across industries, across kind of jobs that you're doing. You mentioned Excel, you mentioned spreadsheets, whether it's Excel, Google Sheets, and SQL, and then Python, those who are keen on learning. Like, every marketing analyst is not going to know Python and probably does not need to know Python at this point. But at some point, they will need to know some flavor, some idea of it. And as my previous guest was talking about, not like I think maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he came and he says the market is asking, the job employers are asking for Python skills more and more. So maybe there is a set of jobs that are coming up and saying we do need Python, we do need SQL, we do need Google or Adobe Analytics. But in the near future, I don't think if you don't know Python that you're not going to get a job. You will. It might be limited to certain jobs. But if you know and you can apply across, then yes, you will have more jobs.
So I think the last point I'll make about this, because we're sort of coming up on time, but so I was furloughed from my job, from my previous job in early April, like almost everyone else. I started this job at the end of April because I started learning Python last December, and I started building projects to automate workflow in February. I wasn't hired because I was good at Python. I was hired because the sort of person who can learn and build solutions in Python in 3 months is very valuable. It wasn't Python that got me the job. It was signaling that I can learn incredibly quickly and that I can really move forward on new skills and new tools. That is far more valuable to signal than, oh, this guy has this skill or this skill or this skill. And once again, that gets into a fundamental framework. So one of the things I would suggest is creating a fairly focused learning development plan. Think about what are the skills that you want to master over the next 12 months. And then don't chase things that are outside of that. There's always more stuff to learn. Focus, especially on fundamentals, and then be able to communicate the value of that. Because, you can find people who know Python. Finding someone who learns very quickly, very, very different hire.
Mm-hmm. That goes back to the point you made earlier, which is the attitude, the drive, right? It goes back to that. I have the attitude, I want to do this. I am focused on doing this. And I'm thinking about solving the business problem. The very first thing you said. It's about what does an analyst do? They are solving the business problems. Data analysis is something that they're using to solve that problem. So think about those. How does it apply to the organization, the career that I'm going after? I think I would say is look around, see what kind of jobs people are posting, junior, senior level, to give you an idea about what kind of skill set you need. And you'll find they are across industries. But if you're applying for junior positions, nobody's looking at how good you are at SQL or Excel or these things. What they're looking for is your passion, your drive. So if you can tell those stories, as Charles was saying, you develop these stories, whether those stories are on your own time. Hey, in my free time, this is what I did. That's my story, actually. In my free time, I started learning about web development. That's how I got into web development. It wasn't something I was paid for. And then I started dealing with the data for that websites. And that was also in my free time. And that free time, I applied it. And then my boss saw it. Hey, I can do this. And that's how I was put in that position. So eventually it'll pay off. First thing is think about what you want to develop. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? You have to build those things.
Every job I've ever had has asked me to solve problems that I have never faced before and that I have no idea how to solve and that I have to learn something new to do it with. Not every job asks you to know a specific tool. So the tool is a mechanism to solve problems, and making it so that you can sort of say, okay, I've never faced this before, but I have a really good methodology for learning and I have a really good methodology for solving problems. So this is how I'm going to tackle this problem.
Yep.
You'll learn what you need to, that will follow.
Correct. Yep. Cool. Any other questions? We still have time. If you have anything, I usually, it's like 1 hour session, but I schedule more than 1 hour, 1.5 to 2 hours is set aside.
So one of the other things, lots of people who go into analytics careers from the start often lack soft skills. If your previous job actually had you cultivate soft skills, for example, if you worked in in a customer service role, data analytics is a customer service job. Nobody thinks about it that way, but you're basically there to service internal customers. Do not be scared to leverage those skills when you're finding a job, because someone with social skills who is great at dealing with people, who can talk the fire-breathing marketing manager about why she doesn't know her campaign report, why she doesn't know her campaign report, the performance, talking them down, so much more valuable than like, oh yeah, I know this very specific niche way of doing a statistical analysis that will almost never come up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And soft skills are very critical. Well, internally when you're working in a company, but I've worked in a lot of consulting organizations, and when I teach my consultants about like how to deal, soft skills are very critical. Dealing with ambiguity in internal, external rules, it's very critical. If you can show like, hey, you don't have the full view, but you started building something on this, that shows again, you can deal with ambiguous situation. Most of the data situations are actually very ambiguous to begin with.
Yeah.
We need this. Now, where are you going to get this? What data is available? Oh, we don't know. That's what you have to find out. Business problem is not well defined. You mentioned something, they were getting the data, but not the right data, or you mentioned something about that. So that is a very common situation, because you might be providing reports, nobody is paying attention to those reports. You mentioned about emails. I'll send an email to the whole organization. Nobody's going to pay attention to it. Why? Because one, they might not find the value in it. They have other things to worry about. And second is, even if they find value, it might not, or a little bit value, it might not be clear to them to how to apply or how it solves a business problem. Like, hey, the data is valuable, but I do not know how it applies. Looks interesting, I would say, not valuable. So those are the kind of things that you have to be able to solve. So ambiguous situation, dealing with them is one of the most critical soft skills you'll have.
Yeah,
You'll need to have.
I mean, that is absolutely right. Don't be afraid to sound stupid and ask a question where, if everybody else doesn't have the question or hasn't asked the question, it doesn't actually mean they don't have it. There's tons of jargon. So I think probably the most common question I ask is, you just said these 3 letters strung together, like I'm supposed to know what they mean. What do those mean?
Yeah.
And by the way, I have routinely gotten the answer back, I don't know. And it turns out that actually understanding the problem, knowing what those 3 letters mean, is super important, because like, oh, you're referring to specifically this group of salespeople that we have termed that team, but nobody actually knows why. And because this is my trick for always recovering your intelligence credibility. Use the term p-value or z-score in your next follow-up. Like if you had to ask a really dumb question, just use p-value, z-score, some fairly basic statistics term. All of a sudden, you will be Albert Einstein again. Everyone will be like, "Oh, this guy's smart." They will forget that you asked the stupidly obvious question. So that's a life hack for you.
What's a p-value?
That is your level of significance. So that is how you.
I'm just kidding.
You should know what a p-value is in case somebody actually asks you that. But
cool. Any other questions? This has been great. I'm gonna watch the comments here if they come in. Renee had LOL. I think she was mentioning too when we were talking about that data quality and how people select the data back. And I think, and Guillermo says, thank you. All right. So no more questions. This has been great. I think lots of great points you brought up in your discussion with your journey on working for 4 companies in short span of time and going through ups and downs and learning new stuff, I think it's very, very valuable. Most of the people who come in are like, you look at the comments, you talk to them, or I talk to them on a regular basis where they're overwhelmed with so much stuff that's happening: machine learning, AI, data, this, digital marketing, SEO, paid search, websites, apps, etc. Google coming up with 2 new versions, Adobe Analytics, and it's overwhelming, right? Focus is what's required. What do you want to do? What resonates with you? Yes, if you are becoming a marketing analyst, there are several things we brought up. You were talking about the data quality, Excel, SQL, Python. Find things that you can be good at, and you will find jobs. I have seen like people coming and asking for skills that I thought will be hard to find. Like, how can you have? But I was able to find people who knew exactly those things. Like, I've done this, right? And they are the right fit for that job,
The,
and
the
that's all you need.
every hiring manager in the world wants to hire someone who has 10 years of experience, a PhD, and is willing to work for $40,000 a year. That is what every hiring manager.
Hey, you're being generous with 40,000 a year.
Maybe I'm being too generous, but hiring managers always want the moon, the sun, and the stars in the sky. They want all of these things. They will list the most ridiculous requirements on a job application. Best thing to do is actually look at the duties, see if you can do it. Look at, and then if you have the tripod of spreadsheets, scripting language, and databases, those are the skills you need. Anything else you can learn later in a very, in a specific thing. But build that tripod and you'll be fine. And to the woman who was doing the analytics, who is sort of the 50-50 marketing and analytics job, something else to think about, and I don't know if your company uses Google Sheets or Excel, if you can become your team's spreadsheet guru, everyone will love you. They will come to you all the time with very simple problems that you can figure out, and you will be able to add a lot of analytics value. And once again, that's something that you can list on your resume and talk about in a job where you said, I was the person in our department that everyone would come to for spreadsheet help.
Yep. I had a thought when you were talking about become that expert in your organization, but now it's, I forgot what that was. So maybe in another session, we'll talk about that.
Well, building on that idea is, depending on the tool, so for example, we're doing a migration to Tableau right now. And so we're internally sort of trying to figure out who is going to be our Tableau guru. Big tools like that internally, it's not a formal title, but there's a lot of value in being the person that people know does that.
Yeah. And I think, which is, you mentioned this early, or answering this question or making this comment, people will ask for a bunch of stuff in their job descriptions, like employers just like to put in. Even if I remember when Google Tag Manager came out, the job description said 5 years of Google Tag Manager experience. I mean, the tool hasn't been out for 5 years and you're asking for 5 years.
I mean, what they're really looking for is someone who developed Google Tag Manager. And then they probably wouldn't pay enough to have them. So
I say ignore those things. Focus on, what your role will be, what you will end up doing, and how it tells the story. Sure. One thing is also, sometimes you get weeded out by these softwares that look at those things and say, does it have Tableau, SQL, and stuff? You can stuff it and talk about it. There are ways to work around those things. You see it, you put them in your keywords, and then you be honest in your interview and say, hey, this is what I can do. I believe I can do this job, and I have done this. This is my story. I've done Google Data Studio. I haven't done really Tableau, but I've looked at Tableau. I'm familiar with the interface. And again, you can do that in Optizent Academy. You can just go in and take a 1-day course and you'll know Tableau or Data Studio.
And truthfully,
that's it.
And having used all of these tools before, if you're asked about it and you don't know that tool, I guarantee you 80% of using that tool is getting the data into the tool the right way, and that's universal across all of them.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, most of the tools in they work in the same way. You talked about solving business problem. What is the business problem that we're trying to solve? And if it requires a bar chart to be shown here, sure, I have done that in Google Data Studio. I know how Tableau kind of works. I can figure it out. That's not rocket science. These are tools. There are so many free resources available everywhere to tell you how a bar chart can be created in Tableau, if that's what you need to do. But getting the data right, understanding the business problem is going to be critical.
So I think I'll close out with a small glimpse of the future. Which is, so we're currently hiring on our team. We're looking for a more senior person. And one of the things that keeps coming up is we have people who keep applying who have data science roles or a data science title. We are basically filtering them out. We are not, I think I'm fairly low down, but my understanding is we're not super interested in hiring data scientists for analytical work. And I think that might be a small glimpse into the future about these might be tracked very differently. Part of it is there's not really a good universally agreed upon definition of what a data scientist is. And then part of it is some people are termed a data scientist, and then when you actually look at what they're doing, they're actually an analyst, but they are expecting either salary or a certain level of treatment or something about them makes them not want to be an analyst or not a good fit for an analytical organization. So because someone was sort of mentioned the machine learning question earlier, and I wanted to, at the very least, bring them up that, that those two tracks might be cleaving a little harder than at least sort of in the early to mid-career. I think people necessarily want to acknowledge, because I think the idea is that if we hire someone who's a data scientist for an analytical role, they will leave us the second they can get a data science role.
Yep. Yeah, that was a Satya, I think, asked that question. So I've got a few comments here. Taylor Lynn, thank you. Renee, thank you. Deborah, awesome. And she also says very helpful for students and those in mid-career as well. And Deborah is another, Deborah and I have known each other as well for a while, and she teaches a lot of courses in marketing and marketing analytics. So I think it's a great comment from her to come, when she says awesome job here, yeah. Charles. And Renee says, I'm a WordPress developer, technical SEO specialist. In my prior life, I developed relational database applications. Not sure what career course path to take. So many options. Any comments on that?
So focus on fundamentals. So look at, think about all of the skills you've developed. I'm assuming that if you were building database-based applications, you probably have a very strong foundation in SQL. The other thing I would guess is you should not be looking at entry-level analyst roles. You should be looking more at database management roles or other, for example, visualization engineers as a title that comes up every now and then. That might be something to look at. Do not jettison all of your prior experience. If you know how websites work and can build them, you're going to be a super valuable analyst. You don't need to sit there and say, oh, I have to take an entry-level position with that experience. You can very easily address in your cover letter. You can basically say, I have all of this experience through my time. The most rewarding projects have been my analytics projects, and I'm looking to make that, the bulk of my job.
Yeah, I think, Renee, maybe we should talk again, because you do have the right set of skills. You have technical SEO, again, on the side of marketing side of things. You've done relational databases, which basically tells me you have the SQL skills. Combining those two, there are tons of opportunities to go in that direction. Now, it really depends on which one you want to align. Do you want to go as a marketing analyst or database analyst, those kind of skills, or something else? I think you have to pick path. And as Charles was saying earlier, focus on those things like, hey, this is my career goal. I am going to, let's say if you want to learn Python to add on to your database skills, great combination. You have SQL skills, database skills, and Python. there won't be any problem in getting a great job using those skills. I can tell you that. I mean, there's so many companies
and
looking for
truthfully,
that.
if you're building web-based applications, you're probably reasonably skilled at JavaScript. And if you have strong skills in JavaScript, you know any hiring manager that knows what they're talking about realizes you can learn Python essentially in a weekend.
Yeah.
So, you don't even need to, you might want to look more like at deeper, like more computer science topics that are once again more broadly applicable than specifically, the part that's poking above the soil, which is,
Yeah. I think her comment reminds me of your comment when you met me in my class, which is like, hey, I looked at your skill set that you had or the way you were interacting in the class and said, yes, you are ready for job. You just need to apply and fix your resume, right? So I think we worked on that and juggled some stuff. I think Renee, maybe that's the same situation. It might be just redoing your resume and putting your strengths up there. I think, yeah, that'll be very helpful for you. So yes, she says, thank you. And now let's chat. So we'll chat and we'll pull Charles in if we need, and he can provide his guidance as well.
There is an opportunity right now. So everyone wants to run towards data science, and it is hard to find people who want to be analysts, as opposed to they want to be an analyst as a stepping stone towards data science. So if you can emphasize to a hiring manager that you actually want to be an analyst, once again, that makes you much, much, much more valuable, because you're not a boot camp away from finding another job, or essentially just waiting for your big break.
Yeah. Deborah makes a comment and has one blue eye and one brown eye. That was about when I was introducing her about, I think she's making a comment. Deborah is great. I've read her comments on LinkedIn, and like I said, she teaches on marketing. Deborah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but marketing analytics. And so I always enjoy her comments and her posts. She also has a blog post. Maybe one day I'll have Deborah on this channel as well to come in. And all of you, everybody has a story to tell, and I would love to bring you on this channel to share your story, or whatever you are doing, or something that's specific that you have to share. And Charles will be back here as well. I'm pretty sure we'll have another story to tell. Devraj Paul, can data science be applied in digital marketing? Yes, that's why there are a bunch of applications. There is a program that we have started called Digital Data Science that's starting in about maybe a month or so. It's a 10-week program that teaches you everything you need to know to apply data science to marketing. Of course, you don't have to go through the program. You can learn on your own. Charles did it. So,
I mean, for certain values of learning data science, I'm still not 100% sure what data science is, and I write for data science publications. So what I will say is one of the practical applications for data science in marketing is lead scoring, which especially for B2B is incredibly valuable. Being able to filter your leads so your salespeople work the best ones before they work the ones that are not the best, dramatically increases conversion rates. If you have a good model. But once again, a lot of that work is done by vendors. So it's a more of a niche field within marketing. If you're at an organization that's large enough to be looking at that problem internally, even then, my guess is that's being done by a central data science team that is, for the whole organization, that solves problems for the organization. I'm not sure. I don't know of any marketing specific departments that have their own data science teams.
Yeah, well, I have come across marketing organizations that have data science part of them, but again, depends on every organization. The next question is this the future of marketing, and how will the word of agency be like in future? Will this be approach integration? What will be the integration like? So it's all evolving, right? Future of marketing. Sure, money companies are pitching this is the future of marketing. You apply data sciences, and companies are already applying machine learning, AI, and bidding system that happens in marketing when you're running your ads. Uh, Marketing automation, that's personalization. That's you can apply data sciences there. But uh, I'll let Charles comment, but if you're interested, that's the program where we will actually use Google Analytics data, ad serving data, all different sorts of marketing data to actually apply models to predict who's going to click, which event is going to happen, and how can you drive more value. All those things will be covered in that program.
My guess is that the very largest agencies will do in-house machine learning. And so one of the things about machine learning is it's essentially uses data, which is a byproduct. The larger your organization, the more data you produce, and it's not linear. An organization that is twice as large as another organization will produce more than 4 times that amount of data. So what my guess is, and once again, this is just my personal guess, if you are not at the very largest agency, there will be essentially a group of vendors that service the agencies that, medium or regional agency will say, oh yeah, and we incorporate, machine learning in everything we do for you. And what that means is they're essentially paying for that from a machine learning company. Because a lot of what machine learning vendors have is they have a data set that nobody else has. So doing what they do as well is essentially impossible for most people. So
Yeah.
That would be my guess is that, and so what you'll see is you'll sort of see bundling that goes with that. But, in essence, there will be specialized MarTech machine learning companies that service agencies specifically.
Cool. Renee says, can lead scoring be done using GA goals? Yes, I think GA goals are part of, are a data point that can be used for lead scoring or should be used for lead scoring. But there are other stuff as well. It's not about somebody filled a form, but there are other attributes, whatever other stuff you have, the data points you have, their behavioral attribute, etc. Yeah, go ahead.
It also depends on how well connected your GA data is to your other data. Yeah. So, for example, the bulk of the universe I work in is Salesforce, and those two, they're really next to each other. They're not tied to each other. And since we have so many more valuable data points from Salesforce, it's mostly coming from Salesforce.
Yeah. Well, even if you take just the GA online data only, forget about the backend data, right? Only somebody came to your website from a marketing campaign, did certain activities, and then filled their form. Can you do lead scoring? Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we will cover in details on how to do that in the Python machine learning course. But at surface, what you're doing is you're looking at every behavior these guys are doing. What clicks, how much time they spent, how much, which links they looked at or which content they looked at, and looking at the complete journey, then you can identify and say, yes, this lead is actually worth more than the other lead who did these things. Machine learning can be applied to come up with those things.
Now, so the last thing I'll say about machine learning is you can, in a marketing department, you can spend a lot of money on machine learning that doesn't actually give you a huge lift. The thing I have learned, particularly when it comes to experienced sales managers, they have a really, really good idea about what works and what doesn't. And, if they're like just intuition guesses, can score at 80% the efficiency of a lead scoring model, and it's not too expensive to have them do it, that's often the best way to go. You have to have massive data sets for the difference to really come in. So, once again, everyone's chasing this machine learning thing, and there's a lot of value there, but there is, the question isn't, is machine learning better? It's, is machine learning better in a way that is worth it?
I mean, you can try it out, right? You can A/B test. Here's a leads that were machine learning identified how valuable they are. Here is something that we came up with. run an A/B test for a while and see if machine learning is actually better, or can you make it even better? So that's I would suggest. Somebody who's trying to learn, I think there is, and this is where I love Google Analytics 4, frankly. Google Analytics 4 now provides you individual event hit or hit level data at an individual person. So I can see exactly what Charles did compared to what Anil did on the site, right? Two people. And then I can identify how valuable those are. I can run Python algorithms on top of that to see and bucket them. And then I can, run all sorts of tests that I need to do. Previously, it wasn't possible with universal analytics. I mean, it could, but you had to do a lot of data processing or connections. Google Analytics 4 does that out of the box. That's why I love it. People are hesitant learning Google Analytics 4 and really skeptical, but I think that's the future with BigQuery, which goes to SQL, and Google Analytics 4. So learn that, and Renee, we'll talk more. And Deborah says, I meant that hiring managers, when she said blue eye and brown eye, their hiring managers are looking for somebody very, very specific. So that's my misunderstanding there. And so here is what Deborah's comment about what she does. So again, my mistake here. We have a master's in digital marketing and analytics at St. Edward's University, and she's the director of that program. And yes, thank you, Deborah. Thank you for joining, and your comments are always valuable. And, and I would, like I said, I would love to have you on this channel. Cool. Any other questions? Nope. All right, guys, this was wonderful. If you do have any questions, then feel free to leave them as comments for this video. And I will send out the video replay link of this video in an email. If you have signed up at Optizent Academy, you'll receive it. Please make sure to like this video. I'm sure you love this. This was very interactive, very good conversation we had with Charles. Give it a thumbs up on this video. And I will also drop a line to his or a link to his articles in towards data science. Any questions you have, leave them as comments. I'll sync up with Charles and we will make sure to answer those questions either individually or maybe in another session.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much, Charles.
Good afternoon.
Yes, it's afternoon here. I think it's pretty much everywhere. There are people from around the world. So afternoon, evening, some people from India join and it's very late. It's 1:30 a.m. in India.
It's still morning where you are. I still want you to have a good afternoon the next time you're afternoon.
Cool. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everybody. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.